18.2, this is Chuck here. I wanted to do a quick debrief with you on your first round of play. So let me bring up the simulation here. And, I'm in a Starbucks here, so it's a little bit slow here. I'm using their server and that stuff. So you can see the screen it all here. Oh, I have to share it. That would probably help. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, so I see here well, let me go back to quarter three. This is an easier comparison. So I'm going to go to quarter three, and I see your net income was at $28 million. And then I go to quarter four here, and what I'm seeing here is it's gone down to about 25 million. So you're down about 3 million. So we want to go back and see if we can understand what happened. So what I did is kind of show you up in here. I downloaded quarter four and quarter three, brought them over to a spreadsheet here. Okay. And so you can see quarter three on the left, quarter four on the right here. So let's walk through this together. So if you notice, your revenue went from 97 down to 86. But your gross margin here stayed about the same. So let's kind of walk through this here. So it ended up being a wash, and the challenge is probably what happened down below. But let's take a look here. So our revenue, okay, if you notice right here, we had about 60,000 units. Forget the dollar sign for the moment. I just did this for my own kind of so I could get it formatted a bit, but you ended up with unfilled orders of about 61,000 units. So that typically means you may not have forecasted enough. So if we go back to the simulation and we're in quarter four, let's go to additional reports. Okay, I'm going to go to the forecasting accuracy. And you'll notice down here, here's your forecast over here, and here's your demands over here. So your actual demands exceeded your forecast, so you weren't able to ship as many orders. And looking at these numbers here, I know if we look at these compared to quarter three, let me bring that up here. You lowered your forecast, which tells me probably that you went with the system forecast, which you're now seeing is a little bit of a lagging forecast, when in fact the demand turned out to be higher. So going into the second round, you can click on the system forecast to see what it is, but don't be surprised if you decide to overwrite it, because in fact our forecasting system on purpose is a little bit of a lag intentionally to teach you about some of the challenges in forecasting. So it's worth taking a look at what it comes up with next period, but don't be surprised if you decide to go with your own numbers based on history. So that's where the revenues went down. But because you didn't forecast as much, you bought less, and so you'll see your product costs are down, as well as your transportation costs. And so your total expenses, instead of 63 million, were 51 million. So missed opportunity in terms of forecasting short. If we go down below here now, let's look at some of these other costs that are different here. So you'll notice your forecast inaccuracy. There is a penalty for forecast inaccuracy. So you picked up $300,000 in extra expenses because forecast inaccuracy, which in the real world would typically be all the administrative expenses you would spend to have to expedite and manage and talk to customers because you don't have enough, etc. You had a little bit of an increase in information technology. That's typically because you probably used RFID and things like that. Coming down here a bit though, right here, this is a marketplace hitting you saying, hey, because you missed our orders, there's a penalty for unfilled handling, okay, which makes our total fixed cost go up quite a bit. And that's roughly what, almost $2 million of the roughly $3 million. The other one I'm checking out, I went back to the programmer to check the math, is your taxes went up by about 1.3 million. And I went back to the manual and saw I didn't really explain what taxes are. This is typically tax on revenue or operating expense, like we pay for payroll or everything else. And what I can't understand, so I got the programmer checking, is if you look at operating income was 34 and you paid taxes of 6.3, how come revenue's down, but your taxes are up? And so I've got a query in to see what's happening in the logic in that one here. The taxes could be because of different places you ship to around the world, because you're shipping to different markets here, but I want to check on that. So fundamentally what happened here is because you had the unfilled business, you under forecasted, you end up paying those penalties. They typically don't always show up on an income statement according to generally accepted accounting principles. This is more, our income statement is more on the managerial side of accounting, where it's a teaching aspect, and so the big penalty is forecast inaccuracy as well as unfilled handling costs. If you think about that in the real world, where that would probably show up would be under general and administrative costs. All those extra costs we incur as an overhead because we have to work with customers and manage customers, and that's calls to customers, meetings with them, et cetera, because we didn't hit their demand levels and they're holding us accountable for it, and that's costing us money, not necessarily in a penalty, but in additional efforts we have to make to, soothe the customer, so to speak, I suppose you'd call it. So something to think about of what those indirect kind of unknown or buried costs are that are involved with failing the customer. So hopefully this will give you a sense of what really did it was the forecast inaccuracy. So you're going to have to look to bumping up your forecast and correct it. Okay. Thank you very much, and hope that helps you.